Hey up troops, welcome back to the Latana Army. I'm Lit and this is Wayfinder, and this is a game that had a really shaky launch. It was one of those games that a lot of the player base tried at the start, didn't really like it. It was free to play. I've done a video about like the things that have changed in Wayfinder, make sure you go and check that out. But it was a game that wasn't very well received, and since then they have done such a good job at redeeming the game, changing a lot of the elements in the game and making it really playable. Now there are tons of videos out there saying things I wish I knew before I played Wayfinder, and a lot of the guides I'm finding so far are really out of date, and there's a lot of filler content in there. So people make these videos and they say, you know, I've got 20 tips on how to, you know, things that I wish that I knew about Wayfinder, and you listen to all the tips, and I have been through a lot of content to make this video, and you can probably pick out, you know, 2 or 3 things that you think, yeah, I actually do wish I knew that one. But then some of the other stuff is kind of like, well, it's just fluff to make up the 20. What I've tried to do in this guide, I've tried to make it really concise. I've put the 5 key ones in. Now that doesn't mean these are the only things, so I'm relying on you guys in the comments to kind of fill in the gaps that I miss. But these are the 5 things that I've genuinely thought, you know, when I've watched these videos back, and I've thought, yeah, do you know what, I wish someone had told me this before I started playing. So hopefully this is the guide that cuts out all the fluff of all the other videos, and this is the kind of guide that you need that's actually going to give you some progress and make it so that you can, you know, do what you need to in the game, and you can level more effectively and enjoy the game a lot more by playing around with some of the more tricky mechanics, if you like, because I've tried to simplify some of the mechanics as well. So anyway, without further ado, stay tuned and let's see what we can do with Wayfinder. Okay, so first of all, what is Wayfinder then? So Wayfinder is a character-based loot ARPG, so action RPG, with optional co-op gameplay and loads of customization options. And this is where a lot of people feel overwhelmed, or, you know, they kind of don't really get into the game because there's so much going on. But you can play this game solo, or you can team up with parties of 3 to explore dungeons, tackle big bosses, craft builds in your own unique way, and all these other different things, which sounds absolutely awesome. But before we start, guys, don't forget, make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe if you're not already part of the Latana Army, because I would absolutely love to see you again. So let's get started. So first up then, let's talk about weapon drops. So weapons in Wayfinder have randomized echo slots. So these are like gem-like slots that you have that enhance your stats and abilities as you progress through the game. Now the number and type and arrangement of these slots can absolutely vary for every weapon. So even if it's for the same weapon, so if you've got a Juggernaut for example, one version might have 1 slot and another might have 3 slots. And the slots might be different as well. So you might have strength slots, you might have resilience slots, and so forth. So pay close attention to these when weapons do drop. Slots that match your build, so like strength echoes for example for melee, can make a huge difference. So whatever the slot is on that weapon is what echo you can put into it. So if you're using someone like Wingrave for example, and you want to boost your ability power, or you might want to make it so that you're a bit tankier, then you want to look at what slots these are so that you can make sure that you're picking up the right ones. So a pro tip is don't just dust or vendor any duplicate weapons that you find. Try and keep multiple versions of the same weapon with different slot layouts. So, you know, if a weapon's got 3 slot layouts in it already and you get another one, the actual arrangement of those slots could be different. So one might be more geared towards melee combat, the other might be a more tanky weapon, and it's worth taking note of them and learning what those are and going into the actual weapon. You can just hover your mouse over them to see what each one does, and then that way you can really customize and really drill down deep into each individual character. So by holding on to these variations, you're going to save yourself a ton of grinding later on when you're ready to actually experiment with new builds. So knowing these weapon slots is really important because it gives you flexibility to try different strategies for different characters. Some echo slots setups are better for specific bosses or dungeons, and it also saves you time because you won't have to farm endlessly for gear in the late game. So next up then, let's talk about weapon ability and ultimate charge. Because here's the thing, your weapon ability meter, which is used for your weapon's special skill, which is the Q button if you're using PC, and your ultimate charge meter, which is your character's ultimate ability, which on your abilities buttons down at the bottom there, it's the one on the right, they don't reset when you die during boss runs or mythic hunts. So this means you can carry over any charge progress even if you wipe, so you can use this to your advantage. So a pro tip, on early attempts, or if maybe it's your first run at a boss, you can focus on building up these meters and dealing damage. Even if you know that you won't beat the boss right away because it's too difficult, you can actually keep going and keep this meter up. Then, on your next attempt, you'll start with a fully charged ability and you can give massive damage, and it gives you a huge edge when you get there. So for example, On your first try, you focus on dodging and hitting the boss to build up your charges. And then, even if you die and don't make it, those charges are going to remain and they're going to remain full. So on your next attempt at going after the boss, what you'll find is you can unleash everything for explosive damage and hopefully for a quick victory. Now the reason this matters is because it lets you take on higher level bosses than what you can probably normally do, because you can actually go in with your meter charged up and ready. Failed attempts turn into preparation for success. So, a failed attempt's not that all is lost and you don't get penalised for it. In a way, you're actually rewarded and you're given a bit of a helping hand because now all your charges have reset. And finally, I mean, this is a must strategy for tough mythic level content like later on. So when you get the tough mythic hunts later on and you've got them big mythic bosses at the end, then what you'll find is this strategy can often give you the edge and be the difference between you completing that boss and clearing it and not clearing it. So next up then, let's talk about affinity points and what affinity points are. Now, each Wayfinder has got 3 affinities. You've got strength, you've got focus, and you've got resilience. And all of these affect your stats and your abilities. Now, to upgrade these, you're going to need specific materials that are unique to each Wayfinder. Now, the good news is that once you spend these materials, they're going to be permanently saved for that character, even if you respec. So feel absolutely free to experiment in this area. Now, to get the most out of your affinities, you need to align them with your gear and know what they are. So for strength, for example, if you're going to have a melee build, you want to be using strength. So someone like Nis, for example, would put a lot of her affinity into the strength tree. You've also got focus, which is for ranged or ability heavy builds. So someone like Silo, for example, would have a lot of focus on his build. And then if you've got a tanky setup, someone like Wingrave, for example, then what you're going to need is resilience for that as well. But you can experiment early. Respec costs are absolutely minimal by the mid game, so don't worry about trying different setups. If you think that you want to do more damage with Wingrave, or you're using someone else and you're using Silo and you think that it's a bit too squishy, you know what areas to put them in. So just to remind you again on that then, so strength is for your melee builds and your damage output, if you like. Focus you used for your ranged or your ability heavy builds, and then resilience is more for your tanky setups. So as long as you remember that, you'll be absolutely fine. And the reason that it's important is because using affinities and getting good at using your affinity points means that you can maximize your stats for your gear. You can make adjustments to your playstyle, which is great about Wayfinder. You may have a playstyle or a setup that no one else has got that really stands out and just works for you. And also, if you're feeling confident, you can try new builds and there's next to no penalty for doing so. Okay then, so another cool feature in Wayfinder is that weapons aren't locked to specific characters or specific Wayfinders. So what this means is, for example, a melee character like Wingrave can equip a ranged weapon and play as a hybrid support. So if you want to be putting damage out from range and you want to use Wingrave still, you can. You can put a gun onto Wingrave and the penalty is still minimum. He's still got all his skills, he can still buff, he can still use all his abilities, but instead, you might change his affinity points like we've just talked about to be slightly different, so you can do that. But the good thing about Wayfinder is it's absolutely feasible to do so. And a ranged character like Silo, for example, if you want him to, can use the two-handed weapon, and he can melee and he can be tanky if you want, and you can make him as a high damage like support build, which would be absolute thing. The possibilities in this game for things like that are absolutely endless. And one of the things that I would say now, as someone who's got the main 3 characters up to level 30, I've still got a lot of the game to play and a lot of the game to learn, but from what I've learned so far, I would say experiment early with these early weapon types. So like sword and shield, long shots, dual daggers, just try them all on different ones. I saw somebody put in my comments that Venomous was awesome with dual daggers, something I've not tried yet, but definitely something we're going to be doing in a future video. And just forget the meta, just do what feels fun and you're going to enjoy the game so much more. What I like about this is it encourages creativity, it gives so much build diversity, more than what you can probably get in most games, because all the characters are feasible. We all remember back in the vanilla World of Warcraft days where, we first turned up with Shadow Priests and they weren't strong, and eventually, Blizzard understood that we wanted to play these hybrid classes and they started making, different classes. So druids that, they made warriors that could do damage, they made, druids that could be a hybrid of everything, they made rogues that could just slightly tank. But Wayfinder just takes this to a whole new level and just means that you can get so much more out of these setups, and it just opens up a whole world of different playstyles for you. So when you're running these instances, there's so much to try, and it just lengthens the content of the game and the longevity of the game for me. Okay then, so finally then, let's talk about the third mutator slot, and this is one of the most overlooked things that I see in a lot of the guides that I'm seeing going out about Wayfinder. This is one that I feel that gets missed the most. It's not missed in all the guides, there are some great guides out there, but this is the one that I feel gets missed out on the most when I feel I've watched the video and think, oh, but you didn't tell them about the third mutator slot. Now, unlike the first two slots, which add negative modifiers, when you're going into a dungeon, the third slot is actually purely beneficial. So it can actually give you buffs, it can give you better loot quality, and it can even make your runs a little bit easier. So overall, you know, make sure that you always fill this slot. So if you're leaving, if you're not doing and you're not putting the third mutator on, you're actually leaving things behind. I watched a YouTuber go through and he said, I don't think we're ready for slot 3 yet, so we're just going to go in with 2 spheres and we're going to see what we can do. But if he'd have put the third slot on, it actually means it would have made it easier because he would have got more rewards. For example, a healing mutator can sustain you in long battles, a loot mutator can boost the drop rate, you know, for rare items, and there's so much more. They've all got their own little benefits. So using the third slot just increases rewards and helps improve your gameplay and actually makes each run a little bit more rewarding if you were to do that. So make sure you don't miss that third mutator slot. If you're going to give advice to any of your friends playing this, make sure, you know, if you want a very easy run, put no mutators in it. If you want a slightly more difficult run with extra XP, put 1 mutator slot in there. If you want the highest XP and the highest rewards and the best kind of run, then go 3. So it's either none, 1 or 3. Never put 2 on, because if you put 2 mutator slots in, you're just leaving potential rewards out there on the table. So make sure that you remember that one. Okay then, so to recap, we have covered a lot in this video today. I've tried to keep it as short as possible, but the information in here, I'm trying to keep it short and valuable, which I think is the best way to do it. So make sure that you customize your builds, so experiment with weapon types, affinities, and just do what works for you. Make sure you take advantage of the mechanics like weapon ability charges and mutators to maximize your efficiency when you're doing all the runs, and stay organized. Manage your inventory, plan farming runs for maximum rewards. And remember, you know, Wayfinders rewards creativity and flexibility, so don't be afraid to try offbeat setups or playstyles that aren't always like in the meta. Just because you see a guide on YouTube, I mean, even from myself, it doesn't mean it's going to be the best guide out there. You know, you could be sitting on an absolute gem of a build that nobody knows about, and if you have got that, by the way, make sure that you share it with the channel. Drop it in my community slot, you know, on my community page, or drop it in a comment on this video. I would, you know me, I love to hear from you guys. But if you found this guide helpful, you know, drop a comment with your favorite tips, your favorite strategy, your favorite builds. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe for more Wayfinder guides and tips. Good luck and have fun finding what works for you. Thanks for watching, guys.